how it was going to be separated, but that's great.
Yeah, I think originally, it was going to be concrete, but anyway, that's nice.
Are we live streaming already?
I don't think so.
Yes.
Yeah, I just started it. Liam's
Okay.
just gonna go check to make sure that it's going in council chambers so that if anyone is coming to watch it, that it's going. So. And I'm just gonna start the backup recording as well.
Yeah.
What happens if I don't like got it or I have to leave the meeting? Okay.
Hope, just testing. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can, Michael.
Thanks a lot.
You look sun-kissed.
Yeah, a little of it. Hi, Rob. Hi,
Hey,
Suzanne.
Michael.
Hi, Rob. Welcome back.
Hey, thanks, Gary.
Good to see you.
Yeah, good to be back.
Allison, there's Liam. Maureen, we need.
She was here a minute ago.
Okay.
She's here. Her camera's just off at the moment.
I'm
Okay.
here.
Yes.
Hi, Maureen.
Hi.
All right, you're just missing David. And we're ready to go. Everybody's here, I hope.
Everybody except.
Well, David's not here.
Counselor Hawkins, yeah.
He is supposed to be here.
I haven't heard otherwise.
Okay, thank you. And are you all ready to go, Hope, once we get?
We are ready to go whenever Counselor Hawkins gets here, or we can start now, whatever you like.
Well, we'll give him about a minute and then we'll carry on.
Here he comes.
Wonderful. Hello, David.
Hey, Rob.
Hey, David.
Good to see you.
Wonderful. Okay, welcome everybody.
I'm now disappearing. I've lost my agenda.
Okay. No, wait.
There he is.
It's nice to have a new roof. Just saying,
Where?
and all the rain and the storms and the.
Oh, for
all
you,
the bad
yeah,
weather.
absolutely. Yeah.
Sorry, I can't abide dead air. Yes.
No, that's right. They finally got that finished up, eh? Yeah.
Well, not all the gutters and things, but the
Yeah.
roof is there. Yes, it's great.
The
great to
important
be-
part.
Under a new roof.
Okay, Allison. There you are. Okay, again, welcome everybody. And this will be the revised agenda for the regular council meeting of Monday, November 22nd, 2021. And we acknowledge with gratitude that we live and work on the traditional unceded territory of the Squamish Nation, whose people have for millenniums been stewards of the lands and waters surrounding Nuclalaquam, Bowen Island. And we'll move right into the approval of the agenda items. Does everybody get, there's just the three of them, Hope?
I did send them by email earlier today. So there were three, just a slight revision to the acting mayor schedule when I copied and pasted the May and November. Councilor Nicholson will be taking those on. And then a revised recommendation for item 6.2 to defer the community organization multi-year core funding policy to a future meeting. Councillor Morris has some changes she'd like incorporated, and so we'll bring that back at a later date. And then item 8.2, a revised recommendation regarding the conservation development policy to refer that to a future committee of the whole.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Does anybody have any other issues with the agenda or additions, or it should be, they think should be in there? I don't see any hands. And with that, I will approve the agenda by consensus. And we'll move on to public comments. What have you got there, Hope?
We have 3 public comments this evening for registered on the speakers list.
Thank you.
There are a few other folks on the meeting, starting with Rosemary Knight regarding the response to the Islands Trust policy statement.
All right. Okay, Rosemary, go ahead.
Very much. Good evening, Mayor and councillors. So I was very supportive of the Islands Trust draft policy statement and have questions about components of the municipality's response. So just raising some concerns that I'd like you to consider in sending this response. So first of all, under desalinization, I read, BIM suggests the removal of the proposed ban on desalinization plants. So BIM is suggesting the removal of this, but it's not clear to me based on what reasoning, what scientific studies. It states that BIM identified that desalinization may be the most ecologically sensitive approach to meet demand. Well, I'm very aware of the serious concerns about discharge of wastes associated with desal. And so believe in a response like this, there should be some literature or technical expertise cited that BIM is relying on to make this claim. The statement is also made that advances in technology and management practices can mitigate concerns regarding energy demand and ecosystem impacts. Well, I honestly don't believe there's good justification for making such a statement. We certainly hope that advances in technology will be able to mitigate these concerns. But I don't share staff's optimism that technology is going to win on this one when it comes to ecosystem impacts. So bottom line for me, I believe the trust is doing the right thing here. Do not permit something until we have completed sufficient studies to determine the negative impacts, the unintended consequences. The idea of desalinization discharging waste into an open ocean has raised concerns, let alone into an inland sea. I personally haven't seen any studies truly looking at what would happen with desal in the trust area. So if our muni is going to ask to have the ban on desal removed, I just want to be sure we have a very, very, very good reason for doing that. And I would like to see our response to include reference to the literature review or technical expertise that backs this up. 2 other concerns for me. The next is the oil tanker traffic, asking for exemptions and flexibility when it comes to oil tankers. If Bowen is asking for this, why exactly? I'm confused. I don't really see the rationale laid out. And I found one of the examples confusing. Cherry Point Fuel Depot on Vancouver Island. I actually think it's in Bellingham, Washington. So I'm just confused on the oil tanker traffic. And again, I feel that the trust put a lot of thought into this draft policy statement. And if we're going to start suggesting that they change it, it would be great to have clear backup as to why we're making these requests. So the final point was docks, where BIM recommends the proposed policy banning docks, recommends that island municipalities have their own authority and be exempt from this policy. Well, again, I ask, why should we be granted an exemption? And if we believe we should be, let's lay out the backup material. We have the Islands Trust specifically to deal with issues where a municipality can fail due to a lack of capacity to take on the required studies. The Islands Trust has put forward a logic to restricting the docks. So what background work have we done on Bowen to argue against this? So in conclusion, I believe a response like this from our municipality needs to be framed by thoughtful analysis backed with scientific, technical evidence. So I suggest adding an appendix detailing the analysis that brought staff to these stated conclusions. Otherwise, this just comes across as opinions, and opinions that I, for one, do not agree with, but I'm open to being convinced otherwise. I believe that both our community and the Islands Trust would benefit from the backup material, the thinking that brought staff to prepare this response. And so in another 10 seconds, I'll close with a more general statement reflecting on what I see the role of the Islands Trust is. The opening statement in Bowen's response was, Bowen Island Municipality recognizes the importance of reviewing and updating the policy statement to ensure it more adequately reflects the needs of islanders today. The essential role played by the Islands Trust is to take a broader view, looking at not just what we islanders need or think we need, but asking what protection our natural ecosystems truly need at this time in order to survive. So thank you for all your work on this. I would just like us to be very careful, very, very careful, very thoughtful before we start suggesting changes to the Islands Trust policy statement. They are thinking of far more than what islanders alone need. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Rosemary. Hope.
Next, we have Richard Wiefelspuett regarding the response to referrals.
All right, Richard, welcome.
Thank you and good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm also speaking to agenda item 10.1 and a draft response to the Islands Trust. And while I probably mentioned a few things that Rosemary has mentioned just before, I will also say that I looked at this draft letter from the perspective of the Islands Trust. How does that actually, how will that be received? And as goodness said, and I ended up being rather uncomfortable with the letter. This draft is presumably intended as a compendium of constructive comments and contributions from Bowen Island to support the development of the Trust's new policy statement. And I find that draft disturbing. I think it's basically two reasons that stick out for me. One is, in general, the letter makes very broad statements, but does not provide sufficient evidence to support the positions that are laid out there. It appears that we're just arguing for the sake of the argument. And I believe this can be improved, especially if we want to be seen as constructive player within the Trust during this tremendously important project to develop a new policy statement at this time. And second reasons are more to the content. And I'm concerned about many of the comments made in sections 2.1 to 2.13. And when the draft letter is finalized, it will be signed by the mayor. This means it represents the whole of Bowen Island, and I fail to see how many of the comments therein are carried by the majority of Bowen Islanders. For me, the comments on desalination, docks, and tanker traffic stand out like sore thumbs, and I, for one, disagree with staff's, I'm not sure what it is, opinions, thoughts, or ideas on these issues. So let me quote freely from 2.3 desalination to underline my point here. So it said, BIM staff have identified that desalination may be the most ecologically sensitive approach to meet demand. Advances in technology and management practices can be mitigated, can mitigate concerns, regarding energy demands and ecosystem impacts. And I'm just really wondering, where are these insights coming from? Did we consult with desalination technology experts and scientists? Did we use their marketing brochures for input? Where did we find these alleged breakthrough technologies that do not exist today? And most importantly, can you prove that your suggestion resonates with the people on Bowen? Maybe, I think it would be more constructive to explore possibilities with the Trust to improve water management systems and practices on the islands and reduce related costs for Trust area residents, including the ones on Bowen Island, maybe also the ones in Tunstall Bay. Regarding 2.5, the oil tanker traffic, this is a complex and often confusing topic. The Trust's initiative to mitigate the negative impact and environmental risks of marine shipping is commendable. However, we seem to focus on diluting the sensible intention behind the Trust's initiative of banning oil tanker traffic. It would be more constructive, again, to work with the Trust on specific definitions here related to the transportation of the complex hydrocarbon portfolio in the Trust area. And what exactly is behind the statement? It is not reasonable to relocate existing fuel depots. Who is to say Where is the reference to Bowen Island? And what is the research behind this statement? How do you back this up? That's a dangerous comment, and without any substantiating evidence can easily be viewed as carrying a bias towards oil and gas interests. And finally, 2.3, docks, pushback from the public guaranteed. Yes, it is true that BIM has regulations in place to prohibit docks in areas where docks have been deemed inappropriate, but we all know how these prohibitions have been undermined by various permit applications time and again. So there are good reasons for the dock moratorium in the trust area, and I suggest we explore this topic with an open mind and together with the Islands Trust. What an opportunity to do the right thing. So let's not waste it. And that's all from my end. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Oh,
Next, we have Julie Vick regarding the Tunstall Bay Water Reservoir.
all right. Hi, Julie.
Hi,
Welcome.
thanks. I hope I'm
We can hear you.
hello. Yeah.
Can't see you.
Yeah, I don't know how to fix that.
Okay.
You just press
Oh.
the start video.
Yeah, I'm doing that. And then every time I go over the little video thing on here, it's just gives me something else. So I'm just gonna read this to you and you can look out the window. Look at something better than me, okay? I'll just
Thank you, Julie. Go ahead. Yeah.
okay, not to waste time. This is concerning the water, the loan, the bylaw loan, the bylaw for the loan, for the parcel tax in Tunstall Bay for the water tower, the new tank, you know what I
Yep,
mean?
yep.
I was just thinking about specifically section 213 and Hope reminded me again today, and I did only really realize that this is a provincial matter after I'd written what I'm going to read to you now. However, I think that it's something I want to pursue as a judicial review, because I really believe that that section of a subject to petition against is not democratic and not in following the spirit of the new federal law against negative billing. So I'll just continue to read what I've got. So it was a request to remove that from the community charter, which you cannot do, I understand, but or withdrawal of the intent to borrow funds for now to finance Tunstall Bay Reservoir tank and revised to exclude the use of 213. I think that there's another section 214 that allows for long-term loans, etc. So considering the federal government's negative option billing regulations, SOR as 2012, that should be 13. Our community charter should be updated to reflect the spirit of this law. While the federal bill addresses businesses and not municipalities, I believe this law should be upheld in our community charter of 2007. It's time for an update. We need to remove section 213 from the community charter 2007. Then section 213 of our community charter places an undue burden on the households least able to pay by inadvertently rigging the vote against them. A parcel tax, such as the one being proposed for the Tunstall Bay water system, should require a vote of 1 per property in the service area, which is a problem in itself, but I'll get that later. In a good year for a general provincial or municipal election, Bowen Islanders turn out at a very high rate of about 85%. And even in such an almost ideal publicly engaged situation, this means that 15% become an automatic, if silent, yes vote. In effect, the side able and willing to pay more now has the voting power of more than 1. Moreover, there's no way to tell who is actually in favor. I don't mean by person, I mean just by who's not voting or yes, versus those who simply forget or didn't feel comfortable voting due to lack of or confusing information. In light of the pandemic that we have yet to fully emerge from, now more than ever, there's a dis-ease of pressure on people to reach decisions in the absence of normal social dialogue. In these times, and because this is a petition and not a major election, with all the information campaigns attached to them, I think it's safe to assume that voter turnout will be comparably less than 85%. Considerably less, sorry. But again, we have no way of knowing using 213's petition against. This petition against certainly benefits the side in favor for whom no action is required. The community charter states in 213(1)(b) would apply to owners of parcels that would be subject to the local service tax. Presumably, this offer to petition against has been mailed to all properties in the area affected. By way of example, the petition against the proposed water storage facility for Tunstall Bay includes large properties which as of yet have hookups to the system, but are allowed for by current zoning and indeed accounted for in the justification for the new service. However, these voting future properties are not included in the cost by paying off the loan which the petition addresses. I mean, it's divided by 135 rather than 160. However, the CFO's numbers are based on 144. So I guess the parcel tax roll review will solve that. And I don't. In fact, this petition against favors developers. Existing households, one vote, are further devalued by adding a silent yes vote from future developers. This section 213 is insufficient and prejudiced to developments infrastructure requirements unless section 201(3) is applied and they are required to provide 100% of their water needs. Moreover, they are not being included as debtors. By the bylaw bases the yearly parcel tax on 135 hookups, not the 160 allowed for and anticipated by current zoning. Those wishing to petition against are underrepresented by vote unless there's a mechanism for accounting for 100% of parcel owners and overrepresented by the onus to pay. And this is wrong. Section 213 is also subject to 212(3)(b). The person signing must be the owners of parcels that in total represent at least 50% of assessed value of land and improvements that would be subject to the local service tax. This again, in matters which require financial outlay, favors those with larger assets. It is probable that a handful of property owners could decide for the majority to pay by simply not responding. In fact, this subject to petition against, the very heart of 213, could allow one developer to decide for a whole community, while at the same time requiring no more or no less than equal payment as a parcel tax. So thanks for your consideration.
Thank you very much, Julie. Hope, is that it?
That concludes.
Well, that's it. I really would, yeah, just in closing, just to I wish that you would consider it. And I really think that as if it was looked at again and we used a different way of paying for it, that would speed things up rather than it getting marred into a judicial review.
All right. Thank you, Julie.
Okay,
Mary?
thanks.
Mariander,
Yes,
may I just
sure you can.
remind Julie that we are having an information meeting and the notices have been sent out and are posted out in Tunstall Bay. So
Oh, yes.
will be attending.
Yeah, oh, I will, but that's more on, I'm for the water tank. I'm just against this petition against,
Okay, well, we can talk about all of that at the meeting. and-
including that. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
super. Thank you, Allison, Julie. That's great. And Hope, that's it, eh?
That's everyone that we have registered on the list. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on to the consent agenda.
Can I just ask one more point of process? I can hear
Sure.
somebody typing or talking or clattering in the background, so I'm hoping that everybody that's online is muted.
I don't think it's anybody in council, so
I just
looks
muted
like they
Martha.
are, but sorry.
I just muted Martha, but I didn't hear that, so I'm sorry I didn't catch that sooner.
Yeah, sounded like typing. You're right, Allison. Thank you. So the consent agenda, does anybody have anything that they need extra clarification in here or want to chat about or whatever? Speak now or forever hold your peace. I don't see anybody there. So the recommendation is the council approve the items as outlined in the November 22nd, 2021 consent agenda. I will move that. I'm looking for a second, please.
Seconded.
Thank you,
Gary.
Michael. And any further discussion? I'll ask the question. All in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you. I think we got everybody there, yeah. Okay, so we're gonna move on to delegations. Oh,
No delegation scheduled for this meeting.
thank you very much. Business arising from the minutes. The administrative, and 6.1 is the administrative procedure policies. Hope Dallas, corporate officer.
That would be me.
Yes, it would. Go ahead, Hope.
Great. Well, I'm happy to be bringing this back. And it was originally before council on September 27th, which feels like a really long time ago. And it was deferred to October 12th. And then I was off for a little bit. So bringing it back now. And I'll just share screen. I just have a few slides just to kind of keep me on topic because, well, I could go on forever. But the purpose of these policies are essentially to have them as, can you guys see that?
Yes.
Have them as like a public facing document just to standardize our processes and procedures that we currently practice. And we have like some of them included on the website, some of them are just internal practices, but having them as a public document for the public to refer to, as well as for staff to refer to as well. And it ensures consistency and transparency in how we're doing things. And this is specifically for public hearing procedure. Should have mentioned that earlier. And so the content of the policy is lays out the public hearing format and what kind of bylaws would go to public hearing, because it's not always clear. Got the wrong thing in front of me here. And also addresses how written submissions are handled, as well as, and the deadlines associated with those, as well as how you can register for verbal submissions and how those are handled at the meeting. It also covers off some Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, just in terms of addresses included in things like that. And it also includes two schedules that outline what the mayor or the chair of the meeting reads out in terms of like the general procedure for how submissions are received and how the bylaw is addressed, as well as the standardized speakers list. So that's for the public hearing procedure policy. And in the staff report, you'll notice that there's the draft policy and it's quite marked up. I sat with Councillor Morse for almost well over 2 hours to go through and kind of comb through. And it was actually a really useful exercise because sometimes when you're writing the policy, you don't always see things that you should. So anyways, it was actually a really useful exercise and just kind of clarifying some points. So it's included. We don't have to go through it all, but unless there's questions, of course. Councillor Morse did send some subsequent changes just recently, and I can pull that document up and we can go through it, or Councillor Morse, you can speak to them. They're pretty minor in nature. So we can go through them, but maybe we'll address the comments first. I see 2 hands up. Or do you want me to go through the rest of the presentation first?
Go through the presentation and then we've got hands up, so we'll go through those afterwards. Thanks, Hope.
Okay, perfect. And then, so the second policy is correspondence, and that's to sort of formalize our protocols for all municipal correspondence. So that includes correspondence that's just sent to our general mailbox, correspondence that it's specifically addressed to mayor and council, and that's sort of dealt with in its own unique way. And then as well as correspondence that's addressed to committees and how that's all handled. So it lays out the types of correspondence and when it's triggers going on a council agenda, whereas when it's not, and the deadlines for getting on an agenda lays those out. So that's currently on our website, but it's not really formalized in policy where it should be, because it's something we rely on as staff and expectations from the public. So I think it's really useful formalizing that, and we can point people to this document and say, you know, these are the deadlines and refer to them. And then it also covers off some freedom of information provisions as well. So that's sort of all I have for the presentation, but I'm happy to answer questions about the 2 policies and the revisions as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Hope. And I see we'll go to Maureen first.
Thank you, Miranda. And thank you, Hope, and Assistant Allison for producing this document. I just have 2 comments. The first is that just to flag that there are potential changes to the requirement for a public hearing coming up, assuming the legislative changes go through, where rezoning, where the rezoning is consistent with the existing OCP, would not require a public hearing. So just to keep an eye on that for the future. And then the other point is that there's a lot of guidance in the public hearing procedure for members of the public. And correct me if I'm wrong, I might have missed this, Hope. But there isn't guidance for council regarding what council should do. Am I correct in that, or am I missing something?
No, you are correct. It's more of a public facing document rather than for guidance for council.
Okay.
And that's certainly something we could incorporate.
Yeah, I think that as a public facing document, it would be helpful for the public to understand what they can anticipate in the way of a response from council at a public hearing. There are times when people have made their statements, impassioned statements, making an argument, and they have looked for a response to council. And it isn't council's role to provide a response on the spot to those comments. And I think some sort of statement in here that clarifies that for members of the public would actually be very helpful. I don't have wording at hand, but this came up in the context of this point. Came up in the context of a 4-day marathon public hearing that was being conducted for the city of Vancouver. And there was quizzing going on back and forth between members of council and members of the public. And just being really clear that that kind of quizzing isn't appropriate on the part of council. We all know that, but there will be future councils that maybe need to have that underscored for them. And I don't think it would take much to just add that into the policy.
I think that's a very good point, and happy to have that as an addition to the policy.
Great.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Maureen, because a lot of them, like you say, are expecting some of a response, and we're just sort of moving on. And I think that's
it's a listening exercise.
So I think if put that into the preamble there somewhere, that would be very useful. Okay, Sue Ellen.
Thank you, Mayor. I was going to mention something like what Maureen, I'm in support of what Maureen said there. One of the things I think is it would be also to say that council's not there to answer questions and staff aren't there to answer questions, because sometimes people just come with questions. And the third thing would be, I know the mayor in the preamble to the public hearing says that after this, you can't say anything. But it would be really good to have that in this document ahead of time so people know this is their last chance to speak with a counselor. If it's not there, maybe I missed it. And
it should be.
Okay.
I believe it says
4.2.
Oh,
yes,
thank you.
And under section 4. Yes, so no further correspondence can be received.
Great. I liked the tone of it. I liked the way it seemed like an invitation to be heard, and I liked the change to the correspondence one about council members can respond to emails, because of course we kind of have to if people write to us individually, for example. And I liked that social media is covered there. I found it again. I think it was there before. And but my other question does relate to the public hearing thing, and it may be that it's in the legislation, I'm not sure, but nowadays, some people are reluctant to speak in public if they know that their home address is going to be broadcast and recorded, particularly women. And in this age of well, you know, all kinds of bad things can happen. It's got a name online. It's called doxing. You know, you document where people live and you put it out there. And I think it might discourage some people from speaking to council in a public hearing, which is not what we want. So my question is that something that the legislation requires, or could we just say, and your connection to the island, or what part of the island do you live in?
Or even just a street name.
Yeah, and typically I will redact the number, but for the public hearing record, you're supposed to record the address. So like for the minutes, for example, but for correspondence, I usually redact the number, but leave the street name. I'm overly cautious in that way with.
That's great, but it's also on the video recording now.
Yeah, and
So it
that
goes
is a
out, like,
requirement to
at the
share
same
your address.
time. Yeah, it's not, it's like it's posted the next morning, so people could still be feeling kind of hot about what somebody said, and it might just, anything you can do to, and it may, I'm fine with leaving this to the next go round, because I think there's more changes coming, and I don't want to slow down this document, but if you could put it on your list. Thank you.
Certainly. And Councillor Nicholson, just to respond to your point about the new legislation coming into play, that was considered when I was drafting this policy, and Councillor Morris actually brought it up as well. And I was of the feeling that the new legislation wouldn't really affect this policy, and that it's still the bylaws that aren't required to go to public hearing because they're in compliance with our OCP policy. They're not required to go to public. These are just, this is for bylaws that are required to go for public hearing. So maybe even in the policy objective that I could clarify that. So this policy is just applicable to bylaws that are required for public hearing, if that's not already clear.
I think it actually is clear enough.
Okay, because I did want to make that, yeah, because it was pointed out, and so I appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Is that it, Sue Ellen? Thank you, Allison.
I just wanted to clarify, I'm trying to look through the Local Government Act. Does the public hearing policies require us to get people to state their name, address, and
Name and address, I think.
Name and address.
Local Government Act?
I'd have to go back and double check, but I believe it is the Local
Here we
Government
go,
Act,
I
because that's
found it.
where public hearings are. Councilor
At
Morris,
the
do
public
you
hearing,
want
all
to?
persons who believe that their interest in properties that must be for the reasonable option present. It doesn't, yeah, we may not have to.
Well, I do know that it is. Liam, were you about to say something?
I just think it's
general practice, and I don't know. I know that
have to look in the regulations probably.
Yeah,
other municipalities.
I think we should take this offline, and because when I'm looking at the act, I'm not seeing it right there, but I don't want to make a comment that we haven't been able to have a chance to review it again. So we should double check that with.
I'm happy to double check that, but I know that it is common practice.
Okay.
Yeah,
well, like Liam says, let's take it offline. And if we can, that'd be great if we didn't have to put in the actual street number anyway, for sure. But some investigation.
But I'm hoping we can pass this, and then if it can be resolved, can it come forward in the next one? Or would people like it corrected before we update this administrative policy?
We could make a simple change just to this policy if once we find out afterwards, right?
Yeah,
It's not a big deal, but I really like the idea, if we don't have to physically record, I mean, if they have to put their name and address on the speakers list so that Hope knows, then that's one thing, but it doesn't get published anywhere and they don't actually have to say it.
Yeah, I'm happy to look into that and just double confirm. Because like Councilor Fast said, we don't want to deter anyone from speaking because of that.
Yeah, maybe if we could get some clarification, we could put that, well, I guess we want to pass this policy tonight.
Adopt it. But do you want to go through any of the subsequent suggestions that I made to Hope, which are more?
I'm happy to pull that up quickly because they're not, otherwise I can just run through them really quickly. The changes. This time I'm just going to share this so everyone can just see what I'm seeing. Where is it?
Gotcha.
Can we see it here? Okay, so just some typos.
I'm the blue.
Councilor Morse is the blue changes here. So would delete considered to make it clear that council gets the on-table package. So it would read, correspondence received after 1 p.m. 3 calendar days prior to the hearing up to 4 p.m. on the day of the hearing are received on table by council and included in the revised public hearing agenda package.
Okay.
I'm certainly okay with that wording if the rest of you are.
Yes.
And then correspondence received during the public hearing, correspondence received after 4 p.m. on the day of the hearing and during the hearing up to the close of the hearing are considered received as on table. So I think we could use the same language and delete considered.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make that change.
Okay, thank you.
And we hadn't accounted in the first one for what happened between 4 p.m. and the start of the public hearing.
Yeah, so after the 4 p.m., which is the cutoff for the on-table package, the public can still send letters. So after 4 p.m. up to the council meeting, during the hearing, up to the close, are considered received on table.
Okay.
And then item 3.4, just kind of cleaning up to make it a little less confusing for the number of times you can speak in the different calls, because there's 3 calls. So each speaker may only speak once during each call for up to 5 minutes per call to a maximum of 3 calls. So it's just cleaning up the wording. So if there's no issues with that, I'm happy to accept that change.
And it matches what's in the mayor's speech.
That's right.
This little blue should down here is a get rid of it. It shouldn't be there.
Okay. And
Yeah,
then
that's fine.
It was the
it
start
should
of the
have
note.
its own number. Okay, so then there's just some formatting changes.
Yeah.
Okay. And if that's all, is my screen gone wonky?
Well, keep going.
No, that's it. I think.
No, the next one was the last one, I think, was trying to, oh yeah, it's gone funny.
Yeah. Okay. So stop sharing that.
So the last one that Hope doesn't have on there was making it clear in 4.2 that council may not receive correspondence or verbal submissions from the public once the hearing's closed.
Correct.
Because what it did say was may not receive new information or correspondence, and we can't receive anything. So that's a clarification. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, that's good. Thank you, Allison.
So if council is okay with those changes, then the recommendation would be that council adopt the public hearing procedure policy number 2102 and correspondence procedure policy number 2103 as included in the staff report. And the council amend the communicating with the public policy number 0702 by deleting the section guidelines for correspondence from the public.
You need to make a reference to as amended at the meeting
as amended at the meeting.
Yeah.
On November 22nd.
Okay, thank you. Allison, you want to move that?
Yep.
Thank you. I'll second that. Any further discussion on this?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Maureen.
The point regarding someone providing their address, we're going to address at a later time.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I've just gone through the section of the Local Government Act, and there's nothing there.
Nothing there
that says that you must provide your address. It's simply, if people who have an interest in the matter before council, and I mean that is such a broad definition that an address isn't particularly relevant there.
No.
I agree, and so I'm happy to strike reference to that in the policy, but I'd also like to follow up with my group of corporate officers to see what the other practices in other local governments, because that has always been our practice, but that's not to say it's.
And I've read that somewhere.
Okay, let's.
Yeah, I just can't pinpoint where I've read that either. So,
because in my Islands Trust role, I sometimes chair public hearings, and sometimes there are people who don't want to disclose where they're living, whether they're living on a boat or whether they're living somewhere they shouldn't be living or whatever, according to the rules. And so and sometimes people are actually living in Vancouver, but I want to know what their interest is in that island. So I just ask, and your interest in the island, and to reflect that language. So if you can adjust that, Hope, that would be great to do it now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, is everybody in favor of Hope just making that change in there? All right, looks good to me. I'm seeing just about everybody. David, you okay? Thank you. All right, so do we have that seconded, by the way?
You seconded it.
Okay, good. Then I'll ask a question. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's good. It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thumbs up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nice to have those done.
Yes, always nice to clean stuff up. And we're going to move on to 6.2. Now, this is the community organization multi-year core funding policy amendment, and I think we've pulled that.
So yeah, so we just need the motion for council to defer to a future regular council meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Allison. And Rob, I got a second there. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay, it is deferred. Thank you. And we're going to move on to the land use bylaw number 57, 2002 amendment bylaw 528, 2020, Daniel Martin, planning manager of planning and development. Okay, go ahead, Daniel. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So on the agenda tonight is bylaw 528 for to be reconsidered and finally adopted. So this bylaw received third reading at our last council meeting on November 8th. And so as our practice, we've brought the bylaw back to the subsequent council meeting for adoption. I don't have a presentation, just the bylaw for council's consideration.
Did we get any letters on that at all, Daniel?
So not since the public hearing in the summer when we. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Okay, anybody have any discussion here for Daniel? Okay, since we don't, I will move that bylaw number 528, 2020, cited as Bowen Island Municipal Land Use Bylaw number 57, 2002, amendment bylaw number 528, 2020, be reconsidered and finally adopted. Second, please.
Yes, Gary.
Thank you, Sue Ellen, I got, and all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, that's great. Thank you. Thank you, Daniel. And the rezoning application, 8.1 staff reports, and this is for the rezoning application RZ01 2021 815 Smith Road, Gordon and Karen Canham. Over to you again, Daniel. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll start a presentation here. Okay, is that showing up okay?
Yeah, great.
So as the mayor said, this is rezoning application RZ01 2021 for 815 Smith Road. All right, so this is located off of Smith Road at the intersection with Fernie Road, so up Woods Road on the north side of Bowen Island. And as you can see here, it's in the RR3 zone, or rural residential 3 zone. So there's just the aerial context of this property. So the rural residential 3 allows a number of uses, but important for this rezoning application, it allows detached dwelling, it allows accessory residential use, which is how we define secondary suites, either attached or detached. And that detached secondary suite can be a maximum of 115 square meters. And there are setbacks, so 7.5 meters from lot lines or 4.6 meters from highways are the required setbacks. So the application received is to increase the maximum floor area of a detached secondary suite for an existing detached secondary suite, and to reduce the setbacks from lot lines for this detached secondary suite. So by way of sort of history of this property, so it's outlined in the report, but the property, there was a prior cabin on this property, so from sometime in the 80s, I believe. that was there, in fact, before the house was built. There was a small cabin as seen in this photo. And then at some later stage, the cabin then was rebuilt by the applicant. And so this is the current detached secondary suite as it is today. So it was rebuilt without building permits or without proper planning permission. And the zoning at the time didn't allow a secondary dwelling on the site, so permits would not have been approved for this construction. So the applicant, when municipal staff became aware, they notified the applicant, and at that time, council had adopted the bylaw to allow detached secondary suites. So staff notified the applicant of the infraction and of the need to apply for permission from council for the dwelling, and then the need to obtain building permit and occupancy permit for it. So when that was presented, the DBP 06-2017 application was presented to council, and council made this motion, as you see, that council not consider the issuance of DBP 06-2017 for the variances. And then DBP and other legal issues be referred to legal counsel for advice and staff report back to council. So as the report says, there's been communication back and forth with the owner and with municipal staff over the following number of years, ultimately reaching a place where the applicant was not comfortable proceeding with a variance permit, which might contain a potential amenity contribution, and indicated instead of preference to proceed with a rezoning application. So subsequently, the applicant submitted the rezoning application that staff are presenting to council today. And then just other considerations as part of this application. So I've just outlined here the building permit requirements. So should a rezoning be successful, the applicant will be required to obtain a building permit for the detached secondary suite and ultimately an occupancy permit. And then secondly, the question of amenity contribution. So council may wish to seek a voluntary amenity contribution as a component of this rezoning. And if so, staff recommend the amenity could be designated for the Park Reserve Fund to go towards capital improvements in the area, or it could be made to the Affordable Housing Fund. So I note in the financial implication section that contributions were discussed with the applicant, but no amount has been offered as part of this application. And so staff were looking for that initial council discussion on the desire for a voluntary amenity contribution as part of this application. And so with that, staff recommend that council refer the application to the Advisory Planning Commission and direct staff to prepare a bylaw to amend the land use bylaw to allow for this rezoning application.
All right, thank you, Daniel. Okay, discussion, Allison.
So there's a lot coverage issue, if I'm reading your report correctly. Now I've messed up my pages. So how much are they actually allowed for lot coverage? They've got 132, but they're allowed a certain amount plus a percentage. So what's the actual, I mean, how much more is this rezoning asking for in lot coverage?
It was in
Sorry, Allison, so it's not a question of lot coverage, but of the maximum floor area for the detached secondary suite.
Okay, because detached shall not exceed a total floor area of 65 square meters plus 0.625% of lot area to a maximum of 115 square meters.
Right, so this property would hit the maximum, so it would be allowed 115 square meters.
So they are allowed 115. So we're talking about an extra 20 square meters.
Yeah.
Right.
200 square feet roughly. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's floor area.
Yeah.
Not footprint. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Allison. Okay, Maureen.
Thank you, Daniel, for the report. It's good to see this coming back to council.
Yes, indeed.
Been on the table for a while. So with the applicant applying to amend the zoning of the property, if they were successful in the rezoning application, is that the creation of a unique zone specific for this particular property?
Yes, it would be in essence a zone variation. So it'd be RR3, and I'm not sure what letter we're up to, E or F.
Okay. And can you recap why they've chosen to go this route?
In essence, I think it was a lack of comfort with an amenity contribution as part of a variance application. So amenity contributions are quite common in rezonings and significantly less common in variance applications, and they weren't comfortable proceeding with a variance application.
Okay, thank you.
All right, is that, I don't see any other hands there. There's David, go ahead.
Yeah, just a bit more on that, please, Daniel. I mean, I need to refresh my memory here, and I know this went right back to the previous council, but we had a little bit on our council. A little bit more about the amenity contribution. You're asking us, should we be asking for an amenity contribution, but are you telling us they would be comfortable with that? I know they haven't offered it. Can you explain a little more about that, please?
Yeah, I guess I would say it was part of previous discussions that an application would involve an amenity contribution. You know, it's sort of a question. Yeah, I think looking for council confirmation in this council with this application that council would see an amenity contribution as appropriate for this application. Or is it something that staff shouldn't be pursuing and shouldn't be recommending?
It'll be interesting to hear what others say, but I would certainly think that an amenity contribution would be appropriate. I mean, essentially, we're upzoning it, and we're asking to capture a little bit of that. This has been a property that's been, you know, a difficult issue for a long time, and it would seem to me that that would be entirely appropriate. So I'm interested to hear what others would think.
Thank you, David. Sue Ellen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'm concerned with the idea of precedent. Partly, I don't like the idea of one-off zonings. And I mean, a zone is supposed to be an area for a reason that has to do with community needs or community benefits or the official community plan. And to grant a one-off zoning without some kind of an amenity benefit would seem to me to be declaring that you can do this on Bowen Island. You can go ahead and build something without permission and perhaps not pay taxes for several years. I don't know what that might be. Maybe you've got an answer for that. But I'm quite concerned about the precedent, and I would like to set some kind of contribution there so that it's a consequence for proceeding in this way of build first and don't ask for permission until you're found out. I don't think that's a good way to run a municipality. So I guess my question is, how many years did they pay taxes, I guess is the question. And do you have anything to say about the precedent and what impact it might have to grant this one-off zone without a contribution?
So regarding the taxes, like municipal staff became aware of the construction of the second dwelling when BC Assessment notified us. So they, you know, they noticed the new construction, they notified us. I don't remember off the top of my head, and I can check and provide that in the next council meeting if then there was like a retroactive tax assessment from BC Assessment.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of one-off zoning, like you're right, it's sort of not best practice, but it does exist, you know, on Bowen. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just concerned about the precedent, and I think that's something for perhaps us as a council to think about. And would this encourage more people proceeding in this way? Thank you.
Thanks, Sue Ellen. I agree with your sentiments there. Maureen, go ahead.
Thank you. I also had questions regarding the tax and whether that had been squared for the years in which the home existed and wasn't on the radar. So coming back to the amenity contribution issue, I remember when we initially discussed this and went and visited the site and got a sense of the cottage, which is a substantial and really quite lovely home. And at this point, that there was if it were a variance that they were applying for, that there were, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just going from memory here. If it was a variance that they were applying for, then as a council, we could not insist on an amenity contribution that needed to be made voluntarily. But if it's a rezoning application, council can in fact insist on an amenity contribution to the municipality in either of the forms that you mentioned. Is that correct, Daniel? Did I get that?
So here's always the nuance with amenity contribution is they're always voluntary. You can't require somebody to provide the payment as part of a rezoning application. However, council's deliberation of a rezoning application is discretionary. So council can say, well, we think that there needs to be an amenity contribution for us to proceed with the rezoning and not proceed with a rezoning if one's not provided.
So the amenity contribution can be provided in advance of completion of the rezoning?
Sorry, no, that the offer, and that, then we can have discussions. If we get to that stage, we can have discussions with the applicant about when it's provided. And we've done it different ways on Bowen in terms of, is it, before fourth reading, it's held in trust and then it's done, or other cases it's been done when then the houses are built at building permit stage, or whatever the case may be.
Has there ever been an instance where the rezoning proceeded, there was an amenity agreement and the amenity was not provided?
No, I mean, the only thing I can think of is when it's parkland that will be provided at subdivision, and till the subdivision proceeds, well, the parkland isn't provided.
Okay, well, and in my case, if we are proceeding to rezoning with this property, I would like to see an amenity contribution to the Affordable Housing Fund.
Thank you, Maureen. I'll go on to Michael.
Thank you, Mayor. This is an old and dusty file. I can remember going to visit with several people here. And, as an alternative to demanding the property is demolished, can we not ask whatever responsible group from our municipality to agree a sum, which would then permit the necessary work to be advanced so that we can have the amount appropriately for our fund, our housing fund, and then deal with this issue, because it's gone on for a period of time. I think most would agree we need to draw a line underneath, and it would seem that the best way to do that is to agree upon an amount. And I wonder the best way to proceed along those lines, in the spirit of drawing this to a conclusion, because I think it's unfitting that it drags on much longer. And if anyone has a better way of doing it, please advance it. But I'm for actually agreeing the sum, putting the money in the account as Councillor Nicholson suggested, and then moving ahead and drawing this file to a conclusion. It requires settlement, and I'm just not actually sure the best way to do it, but I would like us to proceed along whatever lines are appropriate and get this done and get this file closed. Or we pull the property down. I'm one way or the other, but let's not let it drag on any longer.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Allison?
Well, usually we ask staff to go and negotiate an amenity agreement, and it's, unless that amount is paid or whatever, the bylaw doesn't get fourth reading. So, or if it's something that has to be provided in the future, there's a covenant put on the property. So I'm okay with an amenity agreement, and I think there was a previous amount established with some justification, if my memory serves me correctly. And I would like to see it go into the housing fund.
Okay, thank you, Allison. Sue Ellen?
Thank you. I'm speaking for a second time, and I know there's people we haven't heard from here yet, but I'm looking at the amounts that are in Daniel's report on page, I don't know, under the photos, the page that says financial implications. It says 25, in the range of 25,000 to 50,000. My preference would be at the high end of this, because I think we need to dissuade other property owners from taking this kind of approach. And so I would go for the $50,000 end if staff is looking for this kind of input from council, which I sort of thought they might be.
All right, thank you, Sue Ellen. Okay, that's good information from everybody. It sounds like an amenity contribution would certainly be in order on this for the reasons that Sue Ellen says, that we, you know, the old adage, sorry, we've grown up, but the old adage of, you know, go ahead and do it first and then beg for forgiveness doesn't, we have to stop that situation from happening. And I know there were circumstances in this that were maybe misunderstood. I'm looking under other implications, and this is going to be quite a procedure for them to get the house, get the building permit and the occupancy permit for the house. We're going to double up the building permit fees for sure. Registered professional indicating the suite substantially complies with the BC building and plumbing codes. The report can be used for the building permit process, provides the applicant and the council certainty that the suite can ultimately be permitted. In addition, the building permit process will include engagement with BC Housing regarding builder or new home warranty. I don't know what that's going to look like. A code review for vicinity to property lines and a septic system inspection and filing. In my experience, they're probably looking close to at least $20,000 there. Having said that, a lot of that money would have been spent on construction. As far as the amenity, I would take that 20 grand out of the 50 and I'd be more in the range of the $30,000, 20 to 30. I don't know how everybody feels about that. Maureen?
And I don't support that. Anyone who owns a house of that type on Bowen Island probably has an additional $100,000 to $200,000 equity in that home as a result of the changes in the real estate market. 50K sounds to me to be a reasonable request to make.
Okay, thank you, Maureen. Can we have some more input, Allison?
Well, I'm just looking at the recommendation and I'm okay with the first part. And then I'm wondering if the second recommendation, unless there's something different on the agenda cover page, which I haven't got in front of me, we put a second one and that we direct staff to discuss an amenity contribution with the applicant. And then not do the third part, which is preparing the draft bylaw.
All right, but they're also looking, staff is also looking for guidance from council on the amount of the amenity contribution if we're going to do that.
I was trying to be leaving it open because Daniel's heard the conversation, the applicant's heard the conversation, and if the applicant's keen, then they're, so I was leaving it that staff discuss an amenity contribution with the applicant.
Okay, I'm going to go to Maureen and then we'll kind of close this out. I think that's a good idea, Allison.
Just a question. Why is this being referred to the Advisory Planning Commission? What do we expect to get from that referral?
Daniel?
I refer every change to the land use bylaw to the Advisory Planning Commission. So I don't know in particular with this application. I mean, in terms of the bylaw changes, it's relatively small, but it's sort of just my standard.
Okay, I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, thank you.
They might have some useful information coming out of there. Okay, so along Allison's lines, Daniel, what do you think about that if we send it back to staff to have, I think what I'm reading from council here is that we're amenable to the rezoning. But we'd also like to consider the amenity contribution before that rezoning. Well, we can't really demand it, but we would certainly favor that. Would you be okay with that, Daniel?
Yep, that's helpful. I mean, as Allison has said, you know, I've heard the discussion, the applicants heard the discussion, and we can have conversations afterwards.
I guess we should ask Hope what she's got for the motion.
Yes, Hope.
I did capture the council direct staff to discuss an amenity contribution with the applicant. But did we want to hold off on directing staff to prepare a bylaw?
I didn't want to include that.
Okay, that's fine. So then the motion would read that council refer application RZ 01-2021 to the Advisory Planning Commission, and that council direct staff to discuss an amenity contribution with the applicant.
And would that be acceptable to bring that back before our next council meeting, our last one in the year? This has been going on for so long. I think we just have to cut this here and get this over with one way or the other. Would that be acceptable, Hope or Liam?
I was going to say it won't have gone to the APC by that point.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Is
Okay.
that critical?
Sue Ellen?
I think it would be good to take every rezoning to the APC. That's what they're about. And they think about the big picture and the long view in terms of precedents and things like that as well. So I'd like to move that council refer application RZ 01-2021 to the Advisory Planning Commission, and that council direct staff to discuss an amenity contribution with the applicant.
I'll second that.
That's a good, I think that'll do. How's that sound to you, Hope? Good?
I think that's what Hope read out.
Yeah. And pretty much, okay. Any further discussion on this? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you, Allison.
No, I was just going to say, when's the APC meeting next, Daniel? Or
I don't know off the top of my head.
so it is possible that they could meet on fairly short notice for a short meeting.
The APC just met last week.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what the rush is at this point. Right.
It is possible. I will say too, I do have an ambitious report schedule for the next council meeting.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you, Daniel. Okay, so yes, we got everybody on that, and we're going to move on now to the Conservation Development Policy Staff Report, and that's over to Daniel Martin. And as you see, we're going to move that on to a committee of the whole in the future here to discuss it, because I think there's some wide-ranging restrictions in there in my mind anyway, but it's going to take quite a bit to go through the reports back from the different committees, and I think we're going to need more time on it, so we're going to postpone that to a cow. And if you got a Hope, if you got a recommendation for that, council direct.
That council refer the Conservation Development Policy Staff Report dated November 5th, 2021 to a future committee of the whole.
Thank you. I'll move that. Second. Thanks, Allison, and all in favor. Aye. And that's it. Okay, thank you very much. That's unanimous. We'll go into correspondence, of which we have none. We will do the report of committees, and commissions. So a draft response to referral letters, the Islands Trust Policy Statement Amendments, Metro 2050, Transport 2050, and that's over to you, Liam Edwards, Chief Administration Officer.
Hey, thank you, Mayor and Council. I don't have a report to go along with the two letters. We just recently had the Committee of the Whole where we discussed these referral requests. And so in your agenda package, you had the letter to the Islands Trust, the letter to Metro Vancouver. The recommendation included a request that council authorized a letter to be sent to Translink as well. However, that letter has not been finalized and will be coming to you shortly. So it's a fairly straightforward request to ask for council's approval to finalize the letters for sending. And it's reflective of all of council's discussions and deliberations and recommendations from committee of the whole.
That's correct. Thank you, Liam. Any further discussion on this? Sue Ellen.
Yeah, I have a couple of points. For one thing, with respect, I don't think it reflected my points that I brought up in the committee of the whole, particularly around tankers, because tankers are big vessels, right? They're the bulk, what are they called? Well, anyway, they move around between terminals. So they're different from a tug that's pushing or pulling a barge with fuel to a local depot, like last mile. The tankers are the ones that have the oil tankers are the ones that have the risk of a really major spill. Right now, they've been restricted even further just in this past year to just go through Boundary Pass, which is basically skimming along. It's a shipping route that runs along the bottom edge of the Islands Trust. And I think with council, over the past two terms that I've been involved in, this term and the one before, we've made a number of requests and sent letters about asking that the risks of petroleum spills and other kinds of fossil fuels like LNG be reduced. And so I'm speaking to section 2.5, where we're recommending that the letter recommends that the Islands Trust take out that part. I just can't agree with that. I think it wouldn't require relocating existing fuel depots, because those are served not by tankers, but by the smaller barges with tugs. They're not vessels and they're not covered under the same regulations. So I have a problem with that, and I'd like to ask BIM Council to remove that recommendation from the letter. 2.5, oil tanker traffic. Right now it reads, it's on page 4. I don't know if I need to read it. You can let me know.
Okay.
Right now it says BIM recommend that the municipality recommends the policy banning oil tanker transit through the trust area waters, identifiability for exemptions and flexibility. Meanwhile, what I've been working for on the behalf of council is on the behalf of Bowen Islanders, I guess I should say, is to restrict oil tanker traffic to very specific routes and under very specific conditions. For example, being accompanied by 2 tugboats instead of 1. Anyway, I just, I'm not sure why we would be suggesting that the Islands Trust make it change the trust policy in this way to make oil tankers exemptions and flexibility.
Thank you, Sue Ellen. David?
Thank you, Gary. I've got two points. One is the tanker issue, and I guess the point that was raised, and I'm just looking at my copy, well, Sue Ellen said, that's, so I guess it's clarification. The point that we were making in the council meeting was that fuel needs to move to, back and forth among the islands to the Cherry Point fuel depot on Vancouver Island. But are those tankers or are those barges? And I guess by us, we were referring to the traffic that would need to go to the fuel depot. But Sue Ellen is saying that's not tankers, that's barges. And I'm afraid I don't know the answer to that question. maybe Liam could help explain that, because Liam spoke to this back at the at our meeting.
Yeah, and let me be clear. I'm not a proponent of perpetuating the use of fossil fuels any longer than we have to. I personally have a EV myself, and in recognition of the need to get ourselves off of fossil fuels. But I also recognize that that's a transitionary process. And my understanding of the trust area waters, when I look at the maps, is that it includes the Salish Sea between Howe Sound and the Gulf Islands. And so I wonder how any oil tanker would then transit those Trust Island waters to get to the Burrard Inlet, where those tankers need to get to continue to supply heating oil and all sorts of different petroleum products that we are unfortunately so reliant on still today. I'm all in favor of getting off of fossil fuels, but I want to recognize that that's not something we can just magically have happen immediately. And then I do also want to recognize and confirm that Cherry Point is a fuel depot on Vancouver Island, adjacent to Satellite Channel to Salt Spring, that does receive more than just barges. And it is the primary fuel depot for all of Vancouver Island. And Vancouver Island only has enough fuel in that depot capacity to last 2 to 3 days, should there no longer be servicing out to that depot. So that's simply what I was getting at, is that I'm not necessarily opposed to trying to restrict tanker traffic through sensitive areas, because there's a lot of sensitive areas in and around Cherry Point on Vancouver Island. And so we need to be extremely cautious. They have, very good spill containment measures in place there. I co-wrote the spill response plan for the Pacific Coast Navy back in the mid 2000s. It's been updated, so it's not that old today still. So I do know a thing or two about it. But yeah, so I we can look at the language, but the point here was that we still need to allow for fossil fuels to be transiting the trust waters to get to where it needs to get to.
If the language
thanks,
could be
Liam.
changed to remove the word tanker, that would be different. That would be great, because the tankers are the big ones. And I'll stop. Thank you.
Okay,
thanks.
I'm going to go to Michael first.
I've
And
got
then,
a second point, Gary, that I want to raise.
yeah, but okay.
Yeah. The other one was about desalination. And,
Okay.
we heard the conversation back at our committee meeting, and I didn't ask any questions at the time. But I think Rosemary and I made a good point that we need to back that up with data. And I personally, I didn't have time to do any research into this. I probably should have, but I don't know of any technologies that say that's okay. I guess I'm going back to Liam again. Can you help us, Liam, with this? Because this one did concern me a bit. It concerned me a bit back at our meeting, and I should have looked it up. I didn't raise any questions at the time, and I should have.
Right, and I agree. It's a similar response. Desalinization on a large scale can be quite concerning to the marine environment in particular, and it can be quite demanding in energy. When I did work with the Galapagos Islands, which is a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve in Ecuador, which is about 900 miles offshore in the Pacific, helping write their operations protocol and manual for their desalination plant in a highly ecologically sensitive area, we looked at those very issues of how do you minimize the negative impacts of desalinization in sensitive eco-marine systems. And so there are really good management protocols that can be adhered to mitigate and manage those impacts. And I think what we're looking at here is the concern for future needs for water. And the concern that we talked about at a staff level was, if we are looking at limited fresh water supplies for anthropogenic use, is it best for us to be using those limited freshwater supplies, or should we be turning to alternatives? Certainly, I would advocate for rainwater capture as being the first and foremost, and there's many other opportunities before you would move to desalination. But I felt that an outright ban seemed a bit, perhaps a bit too prohibitive. And there are quite a number of people in the islands that actually do currently use desalination, including boats. And so I think just again, trying to be a little sensitive to other people's needs and freshwater ecosystems.
Good.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Liam.
Thank you very much.
Michael?
Okay, because I sit on the Trust Programs Committee that's been working on this review. Certainly, as far as desalination, it was thought by myself and by the way, a lot of other trustees that a blanket ban on desalination this time just wasn't appropriate. It wasn't helpful. There may be many ways to look at desalination, but this just was not the way to go. As far as the tanker issue, whether we fiddle with the wording is one thing or another, but really there is still for the immediate years to come an immediate need for movement of this type, and it was felt that really for the trust to make these really very sweeping and blanket statements did the trust no favor at all, and really was something that we didn't want to see. Please remember that this discussion is still evolving. And one of the things that our recommendations are doing is adding further to this discussion. We're not saying this is the end all and be all of our position, but we're saying that these are our concerns. We're putting them forward. This doesn't, in these two cases, seem reasonable at the moment. It's just too broad, too sweeping, and it does. The conversation doesn't end here. But I think it's a very fair thing to put forward, whether it's docks, desalination, or tankers. Because this is an ongoing discussion. The discussion doesn't finish today. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Michael. Good points. Maureen?
Thank you. Just picking up on the oil tanker traffic point, and I'm directing this to Councillor Fast. I'm wondering if you would feel more comfortable if that initial statement read something along the lines of BIM recommends the policy banning oil transit through trust area waters reflect that some transit may continue to be required. Because I think that really was the point we were getting at in the meeting, that the outright ban wasn't going to fly. And if it could be mitigated in some way, that you might get more support for this point. And with the desalination, I'm never quite sure which is right. Michael and I pronounce it one way, and the rest of you stick an ization in there. Anyway, when that came forward as a point in the draft document, and when pressed, there wasn't much behind the recommendation. It wasn't clear where it came from. It wasn't clear what the extent was. We discussed this in our cow. So I'm not keen at this point for BIM staff to be charged with doing a lot of research on this. Where we're at with this feedback is we're providing initial feedback that will contribute to a first draft of the policy statement is my understanding, and there will be further opportunity, or there will be opportunities for community feedback, local community feedback during the engagement process. So with that slight modification to the oil tanker traffic, oil transiting. I'm fine with this, as is, as an initial document. And having spent the time in the cow, having spent time going over the background to the extent that it was available, I really don't want to spend more council time on it at this point. I think it's very important, but I think we need to hear more from other islands. We need to hear back from the trust rather than us spending time on it.
Can I ask Maureen to repeat her suggested amendment?
Yeah, just BIM recommends the policy banning oil transit through trust area waters reflect that some transit may continue to be required. You could add in the short run or something like that, because I think that captures the discussion that we were having. We were just sort of reacting to that. Well, banning isn't going to happen now. No. It might down the road, but the hate using the word, the reality is that if this were in the policy statement, it would not have force, and that weakens the policy statement.
Good point, Maureen. Thank you. And Sue Ellen, final comments here, please.
Sure. I'll just, I'm fine with what Maureen's suggesting. I'm surprised to hear what Michael is saying about the Trust Programs Committee, because Trust Programs Committee voted in favor to send that draft to Trust Council, as I understand it. So it seems funny to me. Desalinization, there is frequently asked questions have been added to some of the suggestions that came towards this first draft came from First Nations. I believe this might have been one of them. We don't know much about it. I'm concerned about the wording in it that says freshwater resources may be the most ecologically sensitive approach to meet demand. I would like that idea that we're going to produce freshwater to meet demand. I think it could say future needs of residents and nature or something like that. Because I think over the years on Bowen, we've talked about water conservation, and it's not necessarily what the demand is, but that there needs to be fresh water also left for nature, and that demand can be managed, just like demand for parking or anything else. So I would ask that those words "to meet demand" be out of there. And but I'm not going to make a big deal, because Maureen's right. This is just the first draft. It's not even first reading yet. And regarding docks, right now it says, the letter says BIM currently has regulations in place through our land use bylaw that prohibit docks in areas where docks have been deemed inappropriate. There's only one area, that's Cape Roger Curtis, as far as I know. And the rest of the island has not been considered yet. That's on our to-do list in our strategic plan. So I think that 2.3.1, there is a little, could be more accurate, and maybe you just want to put in dot after land use bylaw or something like that.
Okay, thank you, Sue Ellen.
I'm going to leave it there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Allison, last comment?
Are you still going to put 2.5.1 in as an example of an issue of why oil tankers, and they are little, there's little ones and big ones, would still, why they still need to transit the area? I mean, the pilotage authority doesn't let them go through active pass or collier if they're over 350 tons. So
actually, just this summer, do some of the things I was involved in, all vessels under pilotage should avoid transiting active pass and polio pass. Like, it's been tightened up this summer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But they still have to get to deliver the fuel to Vancouver Island.
They do. Those are
But they're not the
I think those are
tankers. As long
mostly
as that word
barges.
tankers is a technical term, and it shouldn't be in there. Thank you.
Well,
Okay, Allison,
Well,
Okay.
oil traffic doesn't make sense. It has to have the word vessel in there, I think.
But a barge is not a vessel, and a lot of it goes by barge. You could call
Yeah,
it,
those push barges, I'm not sure whether they fit as a vessel or not. There
those
is a court case
articulated
on the
barges
definition
like
of
the,
vessel. Well,
Okay, let's, okay, Allison, are you finished?
well, I guess I'm, yeah, as long as something stays in there about oil tanker or oil traffic. I don't think it should be there at all because the province and the trust has no jurisdiction in the waters. That's federal jurisdiction.
No, that's another
I think
point.
islanders want us to help keep the marine waters around Bowen clean. You could call them non-tank vessels. That's the technical term that's in this notice to industry. One of the points, this is noticed. I'll send you the link if you like.
I got the link. Thank you. That's why I was quoting it.
Okay, I think we, this seems like it could go on forever, and I think we got to put a stop to it. We are writing in response to what came out in the Islands Trust policy statement, draft policy statement. It said no tankers, it said no desalination. We've answered those things. I think what we wanted was more of an attitude that, you know, let's look at desalination. Let's look at tanker traffic through there. Let's not, it's an outright ban isn't acceptable. First of all, we need to get fuel to the island. There's no question about that. And I think Maureen's comment that, you know, and I don't know why we're going back on this. All we're doing is commenting on the policy. Policy says no tankers. I would accept that we put that section in there. I don't know if you did, Hope, that, you know, just to change that one section about the, we have to get fuel to the island, and that's an exception. And we had some members of the public talking about why we are making these, and this is a little bit more realistic approach to, unfortunately, a very strong tactic from the Islands Trust. So the recommendation is that council authorize the draft letters included in November 22nd, 2021 regular council meeting to be sent to the Islands Trust, Metro Vancouver, and Translink.
Oh.
Okay, hold on. Maureen?
I thought we were just talking about the Islands Trust letter right now.
Oh, have you got other ones? You want to talk about the other ones too?
Well, no, there's, I've just got a few typos and questions about who the letters are, how the salutations are written and stuff like that, which I assume you don't necessarily, I can raise with staff tomorrow.
That would be nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Maureen, do you have anything you want to say before we go ahead with this?
Yeah, I just want to double check so that everybody knows what the amendments are.
Yes, please.
To the letter. And Hope, did you manage to catch them all?
I only captured one that seemed like there was consensus, and yeah, I'll share that. We might want to do it as two separate motions, just to deal with the Islands Trust letter as amended. So that section 2.5 of the letter be amended to read: BIM recommends policy banning oil tanker transit through trust area waters reflect that some transit may continue to be required in the short run.
Yeah, if you could take tanker out of the and just say oil transit. That was what I suggested.
Okay.
And I think it's still okay to talk about oil tanker transit at the beginning. Sue Ellen also suggested with 2.3.1 that it end after land use bylaw. And I would be okay with that. Everybody else?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, could we, I'm not exactly sure.
But it would read: BIM currently has regulations in place to our land use bylaw, period.
Do you want, I could put this up on the screen if that would make it easier.
That'd be better, yeah. Yeah.
So it's just the two amendments that we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, just a second here. Okay. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Wow, that's not so easy. Can you? Where?
I'm going to make. I'll make it bigger. Yeah.
Thanks.
Is that a Word document so you can actually make the change in it?
No, but I can make the changes tomorrow. I have them recorded here.
So is this big enough for folks to?
Oh, yeah, that's plenty big.
Okay,
Can you
so
get rid of the stuff on the left?
trying, yeah.
Or so we can get the whole, there we go. That's good. I can see the whole thing.
Okay, so I think what Councillor Nicholson is talking to right now, which Councillor Fast identified, was to stop the sentence at the end of this highlighting. So section 2.3.1, BIM currently has regulations in place through our land use bylaw, period.
Does
Yeah.
that work?
Yeah,
We
that's
have a
fine.
reference to docs
Yeah.
in there. Can they say dock regulations in place through our land use bylaw?
Yes, so add docs in here
Yeah.
currently has dock regulations. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. And let's just say anybody opposed? No, okay, thank you. Okay, oil tankers?
I think Hope has that.
Yeah, I think we're,
Okay,
and then there was the 2.2.1, which the
alienation.
Councillor Fast suggested removing the word demand, which is at the end of this first sentence. So BIM staff have identified that desalination within the context of scarce freshwater resources may be the most ecologically sensitive approach to meet demand. So the recommendation from Councillor Fast was to remove demand. So it would be to remove to meet demand. Yeah.
No, I think she had some good words to meet. The needs of
Okay, my
meet
words
the
were
something like that.
to meet future needs of residents and nature.
Yeah, that's good.
So it's needs instead of demand.
Okay.
So
To meet
future needs of
needs-
residents and nature. What about agriculture?
What about business?
Yeah.
Why
That's
don't we
why I
just
was
say
thinking
fire?
either future needs or
Period.
leave it off.
Would
Well,
it
future needs would be fine.
to meet future needs, or just
Period.
put a full stop after approach, which may be the most ecologically sensitive approach, full stop, and then delete to meet demand.
Yeah, I'm happy with that too.
So while you're at it, you can fix your spelling in 2.2. You got desalination spelled two different ways. Pick one of them.
It's just to cover all the bases.
Yeah.
Well,
great.
pick the one that they've got in there in the
Yes.
policy statement.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so what
Thank
have
you.
we agreed to in 2.2.1? Sensitive approach, period?
Sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
that
Okay, everybody seems to be in agreement with that. Thank you. And
There was a concern brought up in public comments regarding the last statement. Advances in technology and management practices can mitigate concerns. I would feel more comfortable if that can were turned into a may.
I agree.
Yeah, I think
Agreed.
that's responsive to the criticism.
okay,
yes, agreed with that one, Gary.
Oh,
gonna
change
lose
can
that.
to may. Okay.
And to me, yeah, sure.
that's a bit,
May mitigate.
okay, thank you. So that's out. Okay,
No, it's
Maureen,
not out. We're just
what else do
changing
you have?
can to may.
Okay.
Are you done?
Any others? Okay, I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay, just a
Okay.
minute. Go to 2.5. Oh. We're still leaving the heading oil tanker traffic in there because that's what's in the policy statement, correct?
Correct.
Correct, but removing. We're
Yeah, no, that's fine.
removing.
That's fine. I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay.
Want me to read the motion?
Okay, I can read it. The recommendation is of council authorized.
It's changed, Mayor Ander.
Sorry?
I just have changed the motion. That's what I mean.
Okay, you changed even the beginning of it. Okay. Could you go ahead with the motion? Oh,
Yes. I think it just needs to be a separate motion is what I'm getting
okay,
at
if you
for
want to
this
split them,
letter.
Yeah.
So that council authorized the draft letter included in the November 22nd, 2021 regular council meeting agenda to be sent to the Islands Trust as amended.
Correct.
Section 2.2.1 delete to meet demand, change can to may mitigate. Section 2.3.1 to read BIM currently has dock regulations in place through our land use bylaw, period. Section 2.5 to be amended to read BIM recommends the policy banning oil transit through trust area waters reflect that some transit may continue to be required in the short run.
Okay, I'll move that. A second, please. Thank you, Michael. And further discussion? Okay, I'll ask a question. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, and that's everybody. Thank you. And the second part of the recommendation, okay, is the council authorize the draft letters included in the November 22nd, 2021 regular council meeting agenda to be sent to Metro Vancouver and Translink. I'll move that.
Oh, before I second, isn't the Translink one going to be removed for now?
No, take Translink out. We don't have it.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
We're only doing Metro.
Okay, so take Translink out and we'll just do Metro.
I'll second that.
Second, thank you, Sue Ellen. And any further discussion?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sue Ellen.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank Maureen for pointing out, for going through the referrals on the Islands Trust website and finding that Islands Trust had referred the Islands Trust 2050 that we just talked about, policy statement, to Metro Vancouver, but Metro Vancouver hadn't referred Metro 2050 to the Islands Trust. So you'll see that I suggested that I followed up on that. And so that's in the letter now under number 3. And thank you.
Okay, thanks, Sue Ellen. Maureen, comment?
Yeah, two things.
Okay.
It's Heather McNell, not McNeil.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was one of mine, yeah.
Yeah, now that's something I consistently muddle. And just to Sue Ellen's point, number 3, I don't actually follow what's there. Am I misreading it?
Yeah, it just, I think maybe it could be clarified, but the point I think that's coming there is please refer Metro 2050 formally to the Islands Trust.
Could we say that in the letter? Because that's much clearer than a formal referral is provided going forward. I didn't know what that meant.
A formal referral to the Islands Trust is provided going forward.
That's what it says now.
Oh, sorry.
What Sue Ellen just said is just much more plain and easier to understand.
Please refer Metro 2050 draft policy to the Islands Trust. Something like that.
Future referrals.
Sounds good.
I mean, basically,
Yeah,
we
point.
can. Yeah. Okay.
And all future referrals. Yeah.
So please refer.
I don't know why you need to say BIM makes no representations to speak for those islands.
Well, because I wanted to just remind Metro Vancouver that there are other islands in their jurisdiction that are also in the Islands Trust. And so it's not just BIM that is part of the Islands Trust that's in Metro, but there are other islands. And
Well, I have no problem with reminding them about that. It was the statement about BIM makes no formal representations to speak for those islands.
well, we don't.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You're getting all kinds of grief about this. Maybe we can just say
Let's just leave it.
as amended?
Yeah, let's just leave it. Okay, so what was that recommendation again?
So the council authorized the draft letter included in the November 22nd, 2021 regular council meeting agenda be sent to Metro Vancouver as amended So section 3 change to please refer the Metro 2050 draft policy and future referrals formally to the Islands Trust. And then just that minor typo of.
Okay, so that's friendly amendment.
And I've got a couple more typos that I'll send you.
Thank you, Allison. So I moved that. Did we get a second on that?
Yeah.
No,
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you, David. I'll take. And Maureen, you still have a hand up. Is that current? Thank you. I'll ask the question. All in favor? Aye. Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you, everybody. Move on to new business. CAO update. Liam Edwards, Chief Administration Officer. Down to you, Liam.
Thank you, Mayor. I only have one update for you at this time. It's to provide a brief update of the regional status and lower or southern portion of the provincial state of flood watch. Yesterday afternoon, I participated in a call with the Deputy Minister of Municipal Affairs and about 110 other local governments, providing updates on where things are at in their communities. And while we all know it's been incredibly devastating and catastrophic events that have occurred in the last week, the update was quite encouraging. There was a tremendous amount of collaboration and support amongst local governments and between the province and the local governments. And we also now see the federal government really stepping in. So I think we're hearing all of this in the news. But the Deputy Minister did also commit to having more frequent and regular touch points so that to keep local governments informed. So here on Bowen, I did send out a bit of a situation report earlier in last week. Here on Bowen, we did have some significant damage to private property and damage to municipal roads, but relatively speaking, pretty light in comparison to our neighbors in the Fraser Valley and north of us too. But effectively, the message coming from the province and from other communities that are more hard hit is that the rebuild and the repair will take much longer than originally anticipated, and so supply chains are starting to move. We're starting to see rail getting back up to speed, highways opening up. Airports were never really affected through it, but it's going to be quite a bit of time before we get up to full operational speed. We have put the notice out to the province and the region that if any of the heavily affected communities did need support, that we would be willing to see if we had any internal staff support that we could share for their needs. We haven't heard any takers for that at this moment, but we continue to make our staff available if that was needed. The other thing that the province and some communities are doing are requesting their staff to work remotely where possible to reduce fuel consumption and also to keep traffic off the roads. Here on Bowen, it's our fuel consumption, if we stay on the island, is relatively low. And we do have some people that do keep working from home, but we are also adhering to the fuel restrictions as well here. So, and we have been in contact with the owner of the gas station to, make sure that we're keeping a good watch on that. And there doesn't seem to be too many worries at this moment in time around that. And we'll continue to keep a watch on things. There's a pretty heavy rain forecast scheduled for the end of this week. And so we'll continue to keep a watch on things. The repairs on the roads that were negatively affected here on Bowen were quickly done. There are still some shoulder and ditch repairs are required, like where there's some heavy erosion that occurred, especially along people's driveway accesses that will need to be dealt with, and so that's of great concern, especially to those private property owners that have restricted access. But ultimately, the municipal roadway is fully functional, and things are in relatively good shape. So I'll leave it there, but open it up if any councillors had any questions about any kind of provincial messaging or status that you might be curious about.
Thanks, Liam. Just as an update, all three places along Adams Road there that had devastated driveways into the creek, and they've all got machines in there now to rebuild. So that's very optimistic. And I did go by the Eagle Cliff operation, and the road. Our crew has done an amazing job there of putting that back together. And I don't see any change from the way it was before, except that they've reinforced that bank and that sort of thing. So they've done an incredible job in a very short period of time there.
Yes, and echoing that, Mayor, I think it's worth mentioning that Twin Island and other contractors responded incredibly quickly to the call out for support, and we couldn't have done that amount of work in that number of areas in that time without that support. So it's a real testament to the community to be able to refocus their efforts immediately to help out the municipality and the public. So that was great.
Maybe that would be nice to put in a little one-liner in the undercurrent or something on our page, on the municipal page, just to thank you out to all those concerned.
That's a great idea. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Liam. And an update to council on Metro Vancouver business. Metro Vancouver Director, David Hawking.
Thank you, Gary. I don't have any additional reports today. I've had no meetings since our last meeting.
Okay. Thank you, David. And update to council on the Island Trust business. Island Trust Municipal Trustees, Fast and Kale. So
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Michael. I'm Trustee Kale has given me the floor first. I'll just mention Trust Council is next week in Victoria, and it'll be the first time that we're all together in person. And I shouldn't say all, because some people are still going to be participating. Some trustees will be participating electronically, and we'll see if that changes, if there's further restrictions or anything. I just wanted to point council to sections 12.7, 12.8, and 12.9 in our info items. 12.7, you might be interested in reading that to find out what else the Islands Trust does besides the things that Michael and I mentioned in these brief verbal comments. For example, on page 22, you can read about how we're advocating for a coastal strategy and law, including to help adopt ecosystem-based approaches to manage flooding, from extreme weather events and sea level rise and climate change and ocean acidification and oil spills and shipping and these kinds of things. So we are taking the longer view, and you don't usually hear about that kind of thing, but that annual report might help everybody understand the Islands Trust better. 12.8 is the more details about the public engagement project, which I think we'll hear more about next week. In terms of the next stages of public engagement. And then the third one is just confirming those welcome legislative changes to the Islands Trust Act. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sue Ellen. Michael, do you have anything to add?
No, I think Councillor Fass has done that very, very, very admirably. It's next week, and we'll be able to report back more after that. Probably be influenced a little bit by our meetings, I think, whether the agenda likes it or not, by very recent events.
Yes, I would certainly think so. Thank you, Michael. Update to council on Metro Vancouver Regional.
I've got a question for the trust, Gary.
Okay, go ahead.
Can you please find out when they're going to be able to fix the website so that when you're on an iPad, you can open the agenda documents, not just get stuck with the first page?
Sure. I think if you, well, anyway, it is a problem because the Islands Trust basically is running the equivalent of, I think it's like 15 council meetings, because they've got them for each section, and it was way more material than the contractor thought. And it's in our preliminary budget information in our agenda for next week is another $15,000 or something to help us get over that cap for some of those extra website capability challenges.
All right, thank you. Okay, now we're going to go to the update to council on Metro Vancouver Regional Parks Committee meetings. Councillor Nicholson.
We also haven't met, so nothing to
Okay.
report.
Thank you, Maureen. Update to council on Translink's Mayor's Council meetings. Councillor Allison Morse.
We haven't met either. Next meeting's not till December 3rd.
All right, thank you, Allison. And 11.6 is to move to a closed council meeting. And the recommendation is the council move to a closed meeting immediately following the regular council meeting to discuss items pursuant to section 90-1 A, E, I, and K of the community charter. I will move that. And thank you, David. And all in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you. Now, I see Martha's here in the, so we're going to go to question period. Martha, do you have anything good to see you. And do you have any comments?
You're muted.
There you go. That's better. Still not hearing you though.
I see her shaking her head. I think that's bye-bye.
Well, now we can hear you.
Martha.
Welcome
All
back.
All right. And on that note, we will go to adjournment. Thank you. And we're a little bit ahead of schedules. Everybody want to take a 10-minute break and come back to the closed? Okay, everybody seems to be in agreement. We'll see you at, let's make it 8:25. Thank you. And we have to re-go in, eh?
A new link?
No, stay on this one.
Stay on. Perfect. Oh, I love it. Thank you.
No, there's a separate link and it's in the calendar invite. It's also in the email I sent.